Hey everybody, Corey here coming at you with another knife review. This time it is of the Ganzo FH51. If you're new around here, consider subscribing. I try to buy a new knife every month. Don't tell my wife. So this is going to be a little fast today because I forgot to do a review on this knife earlier and I need to give it back to my dad in like a half hour. So we're going to blaze through it. There's not a lot to talk about because I'm pretty much happy with this knife. So here it is next to a ZT0452CF, which is a conventionally large knife. Here it is next to an Ontario Rat number 2, which is a conventionally small knife. So you can actually see next to the Rat 2, it's coming in pretty much just barely bigger than the Rat 2. And again, I'm sorry, this is a little different today. I'm holding the camera instead of keeping it steady because it's just an impromptu quick thing. So this Ganzo, I'm just going to say it. This is a really good knife. I really like this knife, and to be quite honest, I kind of feel like I like it better on average than the Rat 2. And I think that's relevant because I think it fills the role that a Rat 2 is looking to fill. You know, it's a relatively inexpensive knife, but it's definitely a worker. It's compact. You know, it's not excessively large, you know, maybe not like the most heavy duty tasks, but it's big enough to get work done. It's small enough to not really bug you in terms of size. So, what we're looking at here is D2 steel. And I think that's a pretty big deal considering we're looking at 26 bucks. Ganzo does something consistently, in my opinion. They make a very, very, very good budget knife. And I think their knives get you about 95% of the way to what I would say, you know, I really can't complain about the knife. And I will say so far, the only complaint that I have between this Ganzo and the other Ganzo that I've reviewed, the FH13SS, they have the same issue, which is really not even that big of an issue. There's like no chamfering on the inside of these liners for some reason. So even though on the external handle, there's chamfering and it's very comfortable, there's no chamfering whatsoever on the inner sides of the liners. So you get a lot of really, really, really sharp, aggressive, uncomfortable spots. Same thing with the jimping. Same exact thing as the other Ganzo. It is damn sharp. Even though it looks really big and wide and you think it might be comfortable, it is sharp as hell. It's not the worst thing in the world, and I think the blade shape here actually does this knife a lot of favors. The Wharncliffe blade shape really doesn't require you to have to dig this knife too hard into anything. It does a lot of work itself. This is a pretty thinly ground blade. To be quite honest, it does a lot of work. It does some pretty good slicing without much effort. The ergonomics on this knife are really good. Aside from, you know, getting a little annoyed with some of the hot spots of the unchamfered edges on the inside of the liners, it's really not that big of a deal. I don't even use the jimping because it's honestly really aggressive. If you had gloves, you would probably actually like it. Furthermore, it's got a full forward finger choil here. So even if you've got big hands, this is something that it definitely has on the Rat. The Rat has no finger choil whatsoever, whereas this knife does have a finger choil, and honestly, it's very useful. I really like holding the knife like this. It is really comfortable. I'm really, really, really impressed with this knife overall. The action on the drop, it's pretty good. It's on bearings, but for a knife this small, yeah, it doesn't drop shut, but it wiggles shut, and honestly, that's pretty damn good for a $26 knife, especially this size. I say especially this size because the blade is really light. So, you know, a lot of knives, they get drop shutty because their blades are so long and big that the weight of the blade carries it. Honestly, this is really smooth, and it has one of the snappiest openings of any flipper that I've really held in this price range. I'm really impressed. Ganzo continues to impress me. Other thing on the list of complaints, I think the pocket clip is just a little too big. It's really fat. It really sticks up off the knife. And honestly, on a knife this small, I don't think you can afford to put a regular sized pocket clip on it and really get that much height and take up that much space, because I really feel it in my hand. It's definitely pushing against my hand because the knife is just so tiny. And honestly, it's right where my fingers want to be. Whenever I go to flip this knife, I feel like my fingers just don't know where they are supposed to be. There's no good place to kind of grab this. So you just kind of have to think about it consciously and remember it every single time. It gets a little old for me having to think about that, but honestly, $26 with everything that this thing has going on. It's got D2 steel. It's got a great blade shape. The ergonomics are good, and there's a lanyard hole for you as well. There's no blade play. There's absolutely no blade play, horizontal or vertical. The centering is dead nuts perfect. I mean, there's really nothing to complain about on this knife, especially when you consider the price. Yeah, there's some fit and finish, issues that I guess you could technically complain about if you're viewing the knife with no known background. But given that this runs for $26 on Amazon, this is one of those knives that's going to be really hard to beat for $26. I mean, Ganzo puts out some really good budget stuff. And yeah, they make some clones too. If you don't support clones, that's your own thing. Maybe just don't buy the clones. If you don't support a company that makes a clone, I guess don't buy a Ganzo. But, all else being held equal, what is this knife missing, right? It's got skeletonized liners. It's got a lanyard hole. It's got a relatively deep carry pocket clip. Yeah, it's a little big. It's not the worst thing in the world. It doesn't have a free spinning pivot. There's not really anything annoying on this knife except for the aggressive edges and the aggressive jimping. Everything else, this is really good. And like I said, if it came down to this and the Rat 2, I would probably keep this, not the Rat 2. So, again, and the biggest thing, D2. Getting D2 steel for $26, that's a really big deal. D2 is a pretty good quality steel for $26. That's all I can think of right now, guys. This is pretty much in line with my other Ganzo review. They make good knives. That's all there is to it. They really do just make good knives. And if you've been thinking about it, I say definitely don't resist it anymore. For $26, this thing is not going to let you down. No worries there. So, hope you guys found this entertaining. Hope you found it helpful, and I will see you guys next time.